Hey, welcome everyone to another episode of the Waters Run Deep podcast. This week we're going to be taking a trip down with aliens, doing the Betty and Barney Hill abduction case. First off, we got a little bit of announcement. We made some charts in some other countries. I just wanted to share that with everyone. Pretty exciting, and not high up on the charts, but very, enough. So a couple weeks ago, the week of August 8th, since we haven't recorded in a while, the week of August 8th, we were number 215 in Apple Podcast in Saudi Arabia for philosophy.
Oh, I'm so sorry, Saudi Arabia. We should not be what your philosophy is.
Yes. And then the week of August 15th, we stayed. We were in Saudi Arabia again in Apple Podcast philosophy at 248. And then we hit 135 in Great Britain in philosophy.
Yes, they love me in Great Britain.
Yes, pretty
wow,
exciting.
We 135 is pretty good.
Yeah, I mean, it's philosophy. I mean, how much are we really competing against? But I didn't even realize we were categorized as philosophy. But hey, I'll take it.
I didn't realize we were that philosophical.
Yeah, it's pretty sad because I'm the one that set it up, and I don't even remember what I categorized as. But I'm good with that.
Man, I love that. Yes. 135 in Great Britain, 2 something in Saudi Arabia.
Yep, 248.
I didn't even think they were allowed to listen to podcasts in Saudi Arabia.
Yeah, I don't know. You would know better than me.
I know. I mean, let's make sure we don't talk poor about. Well, we don't really talk poor about anybody. We have lots of questions, but
right.
Well, thanks for that news. And other podcast news that we have is because we are 135 in philosophy, we decided to become big timers and have put out applications and through strenuous interviewing, lots of conversations, negotiations. We have decided to bring on our good friend Angela to help with some fact checking, not fact checking. I already got that. No need to check there. With some fact checking and producing so that we can make sure we're getting the right information out to you all. So Angela, the reason that we picked her, that she gets to win this, is Angela actually has a very special degree. It is one that takes many years to acquire. She has a PhD in Amanda. She's been my best friend since, 8th grade, 9th grade? It's been a while. It's over 20 years, which is
It was nice. Yeah, it was ninth grade.
Because of that, she is able to identify and learn the way that I speak and preferably text, which is terrible. I'm a terrible texter. I will say the one person who probably has a better degree in this is Christopher. But Angela, we're really excited for you to join us if you want to say hello and tell a little bit about yourself and all that.
Yeah, me too. I mean, can you believe it's been more than 20 years, because next year we've been graduated high school for 20 years. So yeah.
Yeah, I know, it's crazy.
So yeah. When did we get old? I don't even know. So yeah, very excited to be here and join the cast this evening.
Cool. Well, and we are so happy to have you. You also are helping us. David is being a wonderful nephew and helping and our uncle. He's sick right now, so David is being a great cousin and nephew and helping with that. So just lots of thoughts out to our uncle. Hopefully he gets a little better. And we're going to have Ange join us for today's topic. But before we get started, let's talk about Florida Man story. So this one is truly a Florida Man story. If I was to write a Florida Man story, I would probably have picked this one. Florida man arrested for DUI after driving scooter into Walmart shelves. A 39-year-old Florida man was arrested this past Sunday for a DUI, but Not while driving a car. Nope, driving a motorized scooter through Walmart and crashing it into some shelves and customers.
So, I mean, I get the whole thing, the whole debate of, it's not, but technically it's a motor vehicle, so he can get a DUI for that. But I mean, he just ramming random people. I wonder, and he taking out shelves. Like, did he come? Because what store was it? I feel like I'm doing a lot of stuttering here. Well, fitting
Walmart.
place. Those are some pretty sturdy shelves. I mean, it's maybe some of the clothes racks, but I wonder if he actually knocked some stuff down, like tore some stuff up.
I don't understand. Like, if he's running into these shelves, how did he not damage
That's a very good point.
Motorized scooter?
Some robust crash.
So, parts. Have either of you ever used a motorized scooter in a store?
No.
No, but I've had one almost run into me. At Walmart.
The other day, my mom and I went to my favorite place, the Home Depot.
Oh, yeah.
And she wanted a scooter. So she got one, or we haven't even gone that far. And she's like, this one's too slow. It only goes fast in reverse. And
we'll drive around in reverse.
Wait. Hold on. It goes too fast
in reverse. Yeah.
Or no, you said it goes too slow.
It's only fast when you go in reverse.
Too fast. Okay, got it now.
And I was like, well, then go in reverse. Got it. Like, I don't understand the problem here. Apparently that was not the answer. So she made me ride the scooter back to she said, I'll sit here on the lawn furniture. And you ride the scooter back and put it back where we found it and get the other one. And I said, okay. So
how long that takes?
Literally moving to get the scooter back. And I'm trying to park it in between. And this guy comes over and he's like, do you need some help? And then I feel like the biggest idiot. Because I'm like, yeah, I actually do need some help. So I park it.
You have to ask.
Were you trying to parallel park it?
Back in, I guess. I didn't have a backup camera. So then we get on the...
Oh my God. Is your neck broken?
36 and almost 37. I have to get a chiropractor to turn my neck sometimes.
Jesus.
I don't want to hear it.
So I get in the other one. It is faster, and it's more fast than I realized it was going to be. And I pushed on the thing, and it went bam right into the grills. Yep. And I went, that's not what I wanted. So I went, sorry, triggers, and went in reverse and turned out again. And then finally went into Home Depot, and they pack Home Depot tight. I think it's pretty, every aisle is filled with something. And so I'm trying to find her because she is no longer in the lawn area. She lied about staying there. So I know that she's probably in the wood area because she always goes to the wood area. So I went down there with the scooter and I'm riding along. And I definitely almost hit a couple things. A couple people. Oh, and I didn't tell you about this part. I had the dog with me. So she was in my basket and she's peering her head out while we're going. Geez. I mean, it was an adventure for sure. So I understand the running into people things.
Right. I was going to say, you have experience in that. And lucky they didn't pull you over and give you a breathalyzer.
No, I probably wouldn't have passed. No, I'm kidding. But this guy, though, he definitely had glassy eyes and smelled of alcohol. And in his backpack, which was open in the podcast, there was an open bottle of Smirnoff vodka. Now, it says the police could see an open bottle of Smirnoff vodka. But how can you tell, unless the top's off, right? And then you're really just messing with it. Because if you're riding in a scooter with stuff's going to smell like vodka.
Vodka really doesn't have a scent like that, though. Right.
It kind of does, but it's not as pungent as others. But, I mean, unless he's got a Camelback with the vodka in it, and he's just got a separate backpack with the empty bottle.
You know how we go, Ange.
Yeah.
I did that once at a movie theater.
I know.
I wore a Camel backpack and then a hoodie. And I remember thinking, it's 98 degrees outside. I think I'm crazy, but no one questioned me.
Just naturally cold. Yeah.
It's cold in those theaters.
Very interesting.
When you saw Hot Tub Time Machine.
Oh, you're showing how long ago that was.
I already said I was old as dirt. So the gentleman was unresponsive when asked to show his ID and had to be taken to the patrol car on a stretcher.
Oh, Jesus.
He also refused a breath test when he was taken into custody. So, he was booked at the Broward County Jail on DUI charges, refusal with a prior citation, disorderly intoxication, and then obviously possession of an open container. So he was killing it. He was really, really doing things. Really just doing well.
Wow. Gotta love it. Gotta love it.
The things you see at Walmart. I used to go to Walmart all the time when I was in college because it was like the only place to go when I went to college, a small college. And the people at Walmart they never leave you wanting less. Like, they got it. There's always a ton
something
happening.
Yeah.
There's always one train wreck.
We don't really have Walmarts here in Colorado.
Oh, really?
Yeah, we have I think there's one, but it's really far away. I couldn't tell you how to get there or where it's at. But
so what do you have, game?
Colorado prefers Target.
Bougie.
I can dig it. I bet you there's a Walmart in Greeley, which is where the cows live, and it smells like cows.
Makes sense. Cows live there. Smells like cows. Logical.
Yeah. That's how we know when it's going to snow, because we can smell the cows. Well, weather.
All right, you're going to have to explain that.
All right. So the way that the weather comes down, the weather circle thing, and I'm going to need you to Google what that one's called. Yes.
The jet stream?
The way the jet stream works is that if we are getting snow or rain, weather, it comes through Greeley, which is where there is the big dairy and meat farms. So you can smell when you go outside. You're like, oh, it smells like cow manure, cowy, like a farm. And you're like, oh, it must going to snow tomorrow.
Huh.
Yeah. Yeah.
Or do some sort of precipitation.
With rain, but with snow, it's it. And you don't usually smell it in the summer, which is probably good. But in the winter, you're like, oh, I smell Greeley. And it's a common known thing here. You can go anywhere and you can be like, oh, it smells like Greeley. And someone's like, that means it's going to snow. So,
wow.
Stick with me for weather facts. I have another one about tornadoes if you want to know. So we don't get tornadoes in Colorado because the tornadoes are created from the mountains. It's the wind coming off the mountains, starts the wind for the tornadoes to be created. That's why we don't get them in Colorado. We get them in eastern Colorado. We can get them, but we would never get them where I live. Because
you're on the wrong side of the mountains?
Because we're in the mountain. Yeah, it's too high elevated.
Ah, interesting.
Yeah.
All right.
And that, friends, is our weather conversation of the podcast.
Yeah. Nice. I have to create a segment for Fun Facts of Weather by Amanda.
Angela's work would be really cut out for her on that one.
Yeah.
All right.
That might have to be a separate segment, fully dedicated for 20 minutes, just translating Amanda.
A lot of work. All right. We'll go ahead and jump into the topic here. Reminder again, it's the Betty and Barney Hill abduction case. So this one's important.
So it's not Betty and Barbie. I was wrong when I told you that topic earlier.
Nope. Betty and Barney.
I know. Just a Barbie girl in an alien Barbie world.
So this one's it's not probably. It is the first and most reported abduction case. So it's kind of like a UFOologist. Yeah, that's a real thing. Yeah, people that study UFOs, it's kind of like one of their staples, but it kind of goes back and forth either way of which way they believe it, whether they fall on the side it actually occurred or fall on the side that it's kind of embellished a little bit. But most people believe something happened, but they kind of error on one side or the other, whether it was embellished a little bit or whether it was something that actually happened. But it's important because it's the first case of abduction and lost time reported involving aliens. So
sorry to interrupt you, but I wanted to make sure, would I be able to learn about this on my favorite alien TV show, Ancient Aliens?
Yes, they touch on it in season 3, I believe.
I did not expect you to tell me what season it was going to be.
Yeah, I think it's season 3. I believe. I may be wrong on that, but they do have an episode that they touch on it quite a bit. But I think they have an episode that's like completely dedicated to it.
I'm gonna go find it.
Well, you also touch on it on your own
in our
podcast.
Alien Abductions podcast. We did a segment in that on the Betty and Barney Hill. We said back then that we wanted to do a deeper dive on it, and here we are. We are starting to double back and do some of the deep dives we've kind of hinted around to, and we decided to do this one first. It's kind of my favorite of the topics, the alien stuff, and the topics surrounding that, because it's so vast, and I feel like it's getting even more vast as we progress, down the future, I guess you'd say. As the years go on, it seems to get more vast, and the stuff that comes out, and I just like, whether I believe it or not, I do believe there's something out there. I know we talked about that in the other episode, but I think there's something. But I just love hearing how people link stuff together and for lack of better words, find an excuse of why something happened, and persuade it that aliens were involved this way or so. It just fascinates me, and it could be true. It might not be true, but it fascinates me how people piece it together. But I think this one was kind of one of my things that got me into the alien type stuff, is the Betty and Barney Hill case, because I think I don't even remember even learning something about it in school, or even being talked about in school a little bit, just kind of off the cuff. And it kind of had me dive down that road of alien abductions and stuff. And it's a interesting topic because there's a lot of people that have said they've been abducted by aliens. Some are definitely more credible than others, but they date back a long time. But this one's like the first mainstream in the U.S. I think there was a couple that happened in Brazil and a couple other places, but this one's kind of like the first in the U.S. That also involved missing time as well. Because some of the people before that reported being abducted, but they didn't have like missing time. They remember the entire event. So that's why this one's kind of interesting. So the Betty and Barney Hill are newly married couple that live in the Portsmouth area of New Hampshire.
That's for our British friends. We know that they like the word cuppy.
Yeah. So September 19th, 1961, on their way back from their honeymoon in Niagara Falls, they reached the White Mountains in New Hampshire, which is near Lancaster. At this point, an object flew to the west, then back at them. So Barney kept thinking it was something normal, like an airplane or something like an airplane flying through. And Betty kind of was on the side of, she thought it was like a satellite that she was seeing, the way it was kind of flying around. And people that don't know, satellites are new at this point. I think Russia just launched the Sputnik at this point, or not long before that. So they it's new to them, satellites. So once it flew up to them and approached, what the fuck, Chris? Once it flew up to them and appeared to be observing them, so he quickly kind of like drove off. At that point, he kind of pulled off to the side of the road to observe the object. So he's watching it fly back and forth, and he kind of used a pair of binoculars, and he was watching the object fly back and forth. So I have a recording that we're going to play through, or recordings rather, that we're going to play throughout the episode that kind of, most of them are recordings of Betty and Barney Hill when they were either being interviewed or when they were under hypnosis. This first one is describing the beginning events of
hypnoted them? Was that like a hypnosis from like a psychologist afterwards, or was this like an alien hypnosis?
Yes, it is. And I had, hold on one second. I have his name. I'm just going to get to that later. You got a little ahead of yourself there, ma'am.
Oh, okay. I can wait.
Yep, Dr. Simon.
Benjamin Simon.
And I'll touch more on Dr. Simon as we progress. But yeah, Dr. Simon's the one that regressed them. And thank you, Angela. That was very fast. All right, so here we go.
When we, traveling south on Route 3, arrived in an area called Lancaster, New Hampshire, Betty called my attention to an object or a star that she had been watching. As I was watching, this star seemed to be getting larger and brighter. So as we rode along, I kept watching it, and then all of a sudden, I noticed that it had started to move. And we decided to stop, get out of the couch, and take a look at it. I told her that it was probably a satellite. Nothing to get alarmed about, because of this, I thought it must have been military pilots. They could obviously see us on the ground with the lights of the car on. I thought they were playing a game with us out there.
All right, so once again, I apologize for the recordings. I had to thank you to discovery.com on YouTube for this, because it was the only place I could really find them that were kind of consistent. So I apologize for the quality. But just kind of summing up, they were kind of talking about what they, were first seeing and when the craft first arrived. So they were driving away. The object began to follow them. The object's still there and extremely close after a few miles. So it followed them for about 30 miles. And at around Indian Head, the object flew and stopped in front of them. With nowhere to go, they stopped the car. And this is what next recording after they stopped the car.
They followed us for approximately 30 miles. And then in an area called Indian Head, it left the top of the mountain, came out over the highway, and stopped mid-air on the highway right in front of us.
All right. So Barney, frustrated with the whole incident, gets out of the car and walks toward the object. And Barney's definitely a skeptic. So Barney was a World War II veteran and just doesn't really believe. He's kind of like to the facts, doesn't believe in kind of the paranormal UFOs. And that's kind of a newer topic back in the 60s anyway. So it really wasn't a thing back then. So Barney has a pair of binoculars with him, and he uses them to kind of observe the craft as it sits above the road in front of them. And he can see inside the object. He could see glass with the object, and he could see beings inside the object. All of a sudden, Barney gets the feeling that for some reason, he gets this odd feeling that he was going to be captured. So he immediately ran back to the car and started to drive away.
I continued to walk until I would say, approximately 100 feet in this field, across this field, and the object was just above me. Must have at the time been approximately 100 feet up above my head. This would be about 10 stories up. And this, while looking with the binoculars, I could see what I thought was approximately 9 to 11 men looking down through the series of windows toward me. Well, this was too much for me. I pulled the binoculars away from my eyes, dashing back to the car. I was screaming to Betty, "Oh my God," I said, "Betty, this is going to capture us."
So, he says, he calls them men, and you got to remember it was a new subject matter to call them anything else. And like I said, Barney's a skeptic, and I think throughout most of this is an early on interview. But throughout the most of this, I think he was pretty skeptic. I think around the middle of their story, he kind of becomes a believer somewhat. I think even when he became a believer, he still was kind of doubting it a little bit. But
so this is Barney. It's Barney, right? Or Barbie? Barney.
Yeah, that's Barney. That last recording.
It's Barbie.
So he ended up talking to somebody. And I'm assuming this is much later. This isn't like right after this happened.
Yeah,
he sounds older.
Yeah, I'll get into when they go through the regression. But I figured while we were telling the story, it would kind of give it a little more context to hear it, from their mouth. But I'll get into the point where they actually go back and do these recordings. So after they get in the car and after seeing the beings with the binoculars, he jumps in the car because he just gets this strange feeling that they're going to be captured. Like there's something not right and they're going to be captured. And it's a weird thing, there's telepathy and all that stuff that they say aliens do, but it's just a weird feeling that he automatically had. And now remember, at this point, he doesn't think they're aliens. He thinks they're, just men in general. But he just has this feeling that he's going to be captured because they're stopping to observing him. They've been following them for 30 miles. It's late at night in 1961. Nobody's out on the road. It's just them. So it was definitely them that this craft is following. So at this point, once they drive away, they begin to hear a beeping or like a tuning fork sound coming from the trunk area of their vehicle or the back of the vehicle. And here's another recording of them describing this.
At that point, we started talking with one another about, well, what do you think of that? And my wife asked me, well, do you believe in flying saucers now? And I said, oh, don't be silly, of course not. We then proceeded on to Portsmouth. There wasn't much.
So they said that at that point because, and we'll get more into why that happened, but once they heard that tuning fork sound, it was like immediately they went to that. They were talking, having a conversation like, oh, do you believe in flying saucers now? And, that's when he said, of course not, haha, and laughed it off.
Conversation between us from that point. When we arrived, it was daybreak, and the sun was coming out. It was not night any longer.
After they heard the tuning fork sound coming from the trunk, they all of a sudden it like snapped and they were in the middle of a conversation. So after they had this conversation, as only a moment had passed, they heard the noise again and then realized they were 35 miles further down the road. They had no memory of that time. So they were 35 miles further than they were when they remembered seeing the craft. Betty and Barney noticed the moon was large and bright and heard the noise again. So they started hearing this tuning fork beeping sound coming from the back of the trunk area. Next thing they know, they're in the middle of that conversation again, just talking, just general talking. All right, so at this point, they return home and they kind of feel grimy and detached. Betty was wearing a new dress and noticed that it was ripped. She felt disassociated with it. For some reason, she had this disassociated feeling with the dress, like she didn't want anything to do with it. She put it in the back of her closet and just kind of forgot about it. So Barney didn't want to tell anyone about the incident. It was kind of confusing to him. Like I said, he was a post office worker. He's in the Army in World War II. And he's also was in a previous marriage. He had 2 children from a previous marriage that I believe the mother still had custody of. And he was a big activist with the NAACP. Betty and Barney were a mixed racial couple in the 1960s. That was an unusual thing. Common thing now, but very, not so much unusual, but not as common. Betty was a child welfare worker and kind of did some social work. And Barney was apparently extremely intelligent. He was noted as having 140 IQ. So he was a very intelligent person. So he didn't want to tell anyone about the incident, about them losing that missing time, that 35-minute gap of time they were missing. And he just kept saying that, there was no good going to come from it by telling anyone. Pretty much Betty said, like, fuck that, and called her sister. So she said, fuck it. Not really, I'm saying fuck it, but she said, fuck it, I'm calling my sister and figure out what the hell's going on. So Betty's sister at that time had a neighbor that was a psychiatrist, a physicist. And he told Betty, after telling her sister what happened and their sister relaying it to the physicist's neighbor, he told Betty to get a compass and walk around the car with the compass. of course, a battery may cause alterations to a compass, with the needle and everything, but it really shouldn't affect it that much. So while doing that, they noticed there were spots on the trunk that appeared to be extremely polished. So there were some spots on the trunk that just looked like it was highly polished in those areas, little circle spots randomly on the trunk. The compass also began to spin around those areas in the trunk. At that point, Barney stated that he probably should inform someone. So at that point, he decided, yeah, we need to tell somebody about this. This is really strange. So play this next one.
So I went out reluctantly and took a look, and there on the front of the car were very large, shiny spots about the size of silver dollars. The same color of the car, only as if it had been highly polished. And there must have been around 15 to 20 of these spots in no particular pattern, just spotted throughout the trunk. And when placing the compass over the spots, the compass would revolve very erratically. Anytime you take a compass and place it around any metal, particularly like a car with a battery, it will attract a magnet to it. But the fact that the compass would spin only in the area where the spot was located, I thought was a bit unusual. And then this is when my wife decided, well, we should notify someone.
Yeah.
So yeah, that's
he's like, I
really
didn't clean my car. I don't want someone to wax my car without me knowing it. Although if anyone would like to come wax my car.
Yeah, come on out and do it. But it was just strange. It was in like silver dollar spots, almost like the wax sample. They used to do door-to-door stuff back in the day, like vacuums and shit, hair dryers and shit. They used to come knock on your door and sell that shit to you. I wonder if Betty had the wax guy over that sold car wax and was testing it out on a car and fucked the car up, and she was just
didn't want to tell.
She didn't want to tell Barney. Barbie, I fucked the car up and got wax spots all over it. So
I get that. I live with the Barbie. Well, I live with an Adam, but I feel like I want to tell him that I did that. Adam, I didn't do that. I promise.
So at this point, Betty rang up her sister again. So she calls her sister again, and her sister actually happens to have the former police chief of Newton, New Hampshire, at her house. To me, this is like coincidences of coincidences. She called her the first time, and she knows she has this physicist neighbor that has an answer to go test the vehicle. And then she calls her a second time. And granted, there's a couple days have passed, but this former police chief is now at her house having coffee. Now,
all right, so I'm a little curious. How many physicists were around in 1961?
Not very many, I would imagine. Not very many.
So it just, like you said, it just seems too coincidental that she's friends with that person and then friends with the cop.
Right. Exactly. That's it.
She's just an extrovert. Look here, you two introverts. Do not, I could name you a cop and a physicist if you want.
Can you?
Yeah, actually, I can.
Are they on your speed dial?
Yeah, actually, they are.
Well, you're the exception to the norm, Amanda.
Yeah.
I'm an extrovert. All of our extroverted listeners, email us with your stories, because I bet there are other people who can say, yeah, I can name these people because I'm an extrovert and I do hang out with other people.
That's fair. I mean, I can do half of them. I can't do the physicist, but I can have a cop on my speed dial. So
yeah, I can get the cop one sounds more plausible than having a physicist.
So to give some relevance to this, the police chief apparently is Betty's sister's husband's best friend. So I know that kind of went around in circles there, but Betty's sister
husband's next door neighbor's cousin who turned 5.
That's what it sounded like after I said it. Yeah, but it's her sister's husband's best friend is the former chief of police of Newton, New Hampshire. So the former chief of police told Betty to make a report with the local Air Force Base, and this would have been Peace Air Force Base at the time. I believe it's called something else now, but at the time it was called Peace, P-E-A-S-E Air Force Base. So according to the former police chief, the Air Force Base requested the police to notify the Air Force Base if they get any reports of UFO sightings or any kind of UFOs, which is really strange to me because, like I said, Roswell happened in 47, I believe. So what's that? 14 years after Roswell, and Roswell, after a couple months after it happened, it kind of was a mute point at that point. It kind of wasn't in the mainstream anymore, so that they were interested in that. And yeah, granted, Project Blue Book was still going on, so it's possible that they could have put that request in with the local police. So at this point, after contacting the Peace Air Force Base, they were able to speak with a Captain Paul Henderson. The captains, as they explained what happened to him and their story as they remember it now, the captain seems very interested in the encounter. So, and captain informed them that their radar operator also noticed an odd craft on radar that same night. So it's kind of interesting that he had a report from their radar operator from that same night of an unknown craft in that area.
Yeah.
So I have another recording describing that.
After talking with these officers by phone, I felt a great relief because they handled it with great dignity, you might say, in a very official way, and as if this was the responsible thing that she and I should have done, to report it to them.
So Betty reads a book around this time called The Flying Saucer Conspiracy, and it was written by a former Major Kehoe. And he's also kind of regarded as a UFO expert at the time, if there ever was one. So Betty read the book after her experience, and she wrote to him wanting to find out more about what happened to them. So she's thinking it's possibly an abduction case at this point, and writes to him for some guidance. So 10 days after the encounter, Betty had started to suffer from a set of vivid dreams that lasted about 5 nights. And this next recording kind of describes the dreams.
First, they took Barney into one room, and I went into a second room. In this room, they did what I would call a fairly simple physical examination. They seemed to have mostly interest in my skin. I had the idea they were taking pictures of my skin, also interest in my hands and my feet. They also did a test which they called checking my nervous system. Throughout the whole examination, it would be like picking up some kind of a strange animal and looking it over, giving it a checkup and putting it back down again, without any intentions of harming it.
So wait, that was the police office or that was the aliens?
This is her dreams that she was having that started about 10 days after the incident. So she's describing her dreams that she was having. So the dreams were of an encounter with human-like entities that surrounded the car and then took them onto a craft. Once on the craft, the beings performed highly unusual physical examination. So they kind of she starts to have these dreams basically somewhat detailing an abduction. I don't believe at this point that they really have a description of the beings. I think it starts to form at this point, but they don't have a solid description of the beings. So this next one, Barney also starts to have dreams as well. And this next recording kind of details the dreams that he starts to have.
We must have spent about 12 hours going over this great depth when they came up with the idea that we realized that from the time we left Holbrook and the time we arrived in Portsmouth was close to 6 hours, then 4 hours, which it should have taken. We hadn't really realized it. It was obvious that we both had suffered amnesia at Indian Head. This is highly improbable for two people to suffer amnesia at the same time.
So, so he's kind of having the same dreams, and he's kind of starting to relate it back to the incident. And he's kind of just saying it was amnesia at this point, like it wasn't an abduction, his mind was wiped or anything like that. He was just relating it back to amnesia. So Betty kept feeling like the dreams were of something that actually happened. And it was something that happened between the buzzing sounds that they heard while they were in the car. So NICAP generates interest after learning of Betty's letter to Major Donald Kehoe. And NICAP is, or still is, a National Investigations Committee of Aerial Phenomenon. So they're a group or entity that investigates UFO phenomenon. So according to the records, they had similar UFOs reported over California, Kentucky, and India at that time as well. So there was kind of generating somewhat of a hot spot at that time in that, not in that area, but across the U.S. Lots of UFO sightings. So October 1961, Boston NICAP investigator Walter Webb interviews Betty and Barney at their home. A few weeks later, another set of investigators helped make a startling discovery. So Betty and Barney start to believe that Betty's dream really happened. So they're really starting to believe that it wasn't really a dream as it is a recollection of events. So Betty wanted the truth. She was really pushing to really find out what happened. And of course, Barney wanted to keep quiet. Like I said, they're an interracial couple. So they're trying to, fly under the radar and not fluffed any feathers and kind of just, let it go. Of course, he's also big within the NAACP and he's a big civil rights advocate. So he's kind of, focusing on that. And it almost seemed like he potentially would have taken a route, in my opinion. I've never heard anybody say this or read this anywhere, but it almost seemed like he was going to start making a run for a possible political career, maybe in a local office or something like that. I could have definitely seen it going that way. So unfortunately, it began to eat away at Barney. So he was suffering from a worsening stomach ulcer. So he goes to his doctor. His doctor really can't find anything so much wrong with him other than the ulcer. And his primary care suggested it's potentially from stress. So he suggested Barney goes to a psychiatrist for help. And here is where they begin their hypnosis. So Barney receives a hypnotherapy regression via Dr. Benjamin Simon. And here is a recording of that, beginning of that.
I one day mentioned to him how Betty and I had seen a UFO. As a result of it, it looked as if we both had amnesia at the same time, because then I filled him in briefly with what we knew. So he recognized that this was possibly the cause of my ulcer. He recommended a psychiatrist in Boston, Dr. Benjamin Simon. A very qualified, prominent psychiatrist, might say qualified to regress one back with the use of hypnotherapy.
So this occurred. They didn't go in. He didn't start having the ulcer too much. It wasn't immediately after the incident. So this didn't occur until about 2 years after the abduction incident is when Dr. Simon gets involved. So Dr. Simon was a colonel in the Army. He was basically the architect of a new way to treat PTSD using hypnotherapy. So he would use hypnotherapy to treat soldiers who were suffering from PTSD. So he was kind of the spearheader of that. So in this next recording, it's going to be Dr. Simon describing the process somewhat of how it works.
Many symptoms had begun just after they had this sighting. Betty had responded by a series of dreams extending over a week or more of a nightmarish quality. So it seemed that this problem really involved both of them in their experiences, and I undertook to take both of the treatment and to use hypnosis to penetrate what appeared to be an amnesic period with very vague background.
So Barney recalls the entire event under hypnosis, so except for when they encounter the beings and the ship. At that point, he appears to have some sort of mental block around that. So at this point, when Dr. Simon gets to that under hypnosis, Barney pleads with Dr. Simon to not make him remember the event. So Dr. Simon insists, and Barney break through and remember what happened. So Barney recalls a compelling force and a voice in his head. And here's Barney describing that, or this is Barney under hypnosis, kind of describing that event.
Clasp your hands in front of you, tight, tighter. As they get tighter, you're going to sleep. You're going into a deep, deep sleep. Your eyes are getting heavy. They're closing tight. Now, your hands are relaxed. We're going back. We're going back to September 19, 1961, when you were returning from your vacation. We're going back to September 19, 1961.
Under hypnosis, which was quite deep. I took them one at a time, of course, so we began with Barney and directed him to tell me everything that happened on that trip. All the feelings he had, all the experiences were to be related, and so on. Wake up. You're not going to wake up. You're in a deep sleep. This is not going to trouble you. Go on. You can remember everything now. It's right over my right. God, what is it? And I try to maintain control so Betty cannot tell I am scared. God, I'm scared.
He's
Damn.
definitely some serious stuff going on there, PTSD. So in another session, Barney recalls hearing the beeping sound and what happens next. Barney states after hearing the beeps, he is compelled to turn off the highway onto a dirt road. After driving on the dirt road for a bit, he approaches the craft, and the beings are outside waiting for them. So as they approach on the dirt road, all of a sudden they come around a corner, and the craft's landed in the middle of the dirt road, and there's beings standing outside the ship waiting for them. Barney states that they were all wearing like shiny black uniforms that are tight fitting, appearing to be like what we call now like a spandex. And Betty also recalls the same. Keep in mind that both these hypnosis were done alone and separate. Not that they didn't talk in between and go over their stories of how it went down, but they were done separate. So it's, I'm not saying it's impossible for them to get things, details right and everything else, but it's not like they were done in the same room as each other. So this next recordings go over that.
I get out with the binoculars, and it is there. And I look, and it's just over. And I think I'm not afraid. And I walk out, and I walk across the road. There it is up there. Oh, God. Calm down. What did he tell you? Stay there and keep looking. Just keep looking and stay there. And just keep looking. Just keep looking.
So what he's saying is that they're just telling him to keep looking. That's all they keep. It's what he's hearing in his head. It's just keep looking, keep looking. There, continue.
Did you hear him tell you? Oh, I got to pull these binoculars away from my eyes. If I don't, I'll just keep staying there. Did you hear him tell you this? Oh, no, he didn't say it. You felt you said it. I know. You know he did. Just there, yeah. Just stay there, he's saying to me. All right. I'll take it by head.
So he's hearing it in his head to just stay there. He's looking through the binoculars at the craft and the beings, and he's hearing, just stay there, don't move. Just stay there, don't move.
So I feel like the music that's associated with this makes it sound even scarier.
It does. And I wish I was able to kind of break it out a little bit. If I played around with it, I probably could have got it. But anyway.
I mean, like, it's fine. I just feel like it's a great thing to acknowledge that, like, the music doesn't help. But this is pretty scary. I can't imagine, like, hearing in your head, just stay there, and you're like, that's not my voice.
Yeah. And that's something that's been that's been reported in a lot of UFO incidents, that they don't communicate verbally, they hear it in their head. I always thought that was kind of interesting. So of course Betty also goes through a hypnotic regression with Dr. Simon, and she recalls attempting to flee But as she attempts to flee, she loses consciousness. She remembers the beings escorting her through the woods and onto the craft. Beings tell her they're going to do a few tests, but they won't harm her. So they keep reaffirming that they're not going to hurt her. They're just going to do a few tests, and that's it. Of course, Betty doesn't trust them, and she attempts to flee by kicking one of the beings beside her. Investigators believe this is when her dress was ripped. So at a point during the event, her breast, the fuck?
It's on your mind, Chris.
I tell you, dress is ripped. So here's her talking about that.
I don't know where we are. I don't even know how we got here. At that time, I didn't feel afraid.
Why are you crying if you're not afraid?
I was afraid when I thought the men in the road.
Men in the road?
I've never been so afraid in my life.
So did these aliens look like, I don't want to say normal men, but like look like you and me?
We'll get into that in a second and what they look like. So the beings regain control of her and take her to an exam room onto the craft. And here is what happens after that.
They're taking me up to the object. Now I don't want to go on it. I don't know what's going to happen if I go on it. I don't want to go. I go up the ramp and I go inside. I'll watch them take Barney in the next room. And I go in this room. He tells me to take off my dress, and then before I even have a chance hardly to stand up to do it, the examiner, my dress has a zipper down the back, and the examiner unzips my dress. It goes way down on my waist, the zipper does. And so I slip my dress off. So I don't have my dress or my shoes on.
So keep in mind, I know, Manny, you made a comment about them sounding older. It is a few years after the event, but you got to remember, this is recorded in 1961, so everybody sounds older because they sound more refined, I guess you'd say. They don't talk like us future people.
Well, I guess I didn't realize that they were probably an older couple that got married. I think at first I thought maybe they had gotten married at like 1920, but when you said that Barney had some kids,
but they were in their mid 30s, I believe, when the event occurred. So, like I said, she was, like she just said, rather, she was met by someone Betty called the examiner. So the examiner uses a stylus to press on her vertebrae in her spine and apparently take skin samples.
No.
Yes.
That just sounds not up my league. I always think about like, do y'all watch SNL? And they would do the skit, and I think our favorite actor, Ryan Gosling's in one of the skits where they talk about their alien abductions, and it's like these 3 very people at Walmart people. And the one is Kate McKinnon, and she's like, man, that really gets my girls because your experience is very different than mine. Have you watched that one? I'll have to send it to you.
No.
Or she's like, because the other people are like, man, it was like this beautiful experience, and I felt this comfort and this wonder. And Kate McKinnon's like, okay, I'm a little pissed about that because they really wanted to put something up my hoo-hoo and my boo-hoo. It's really pretty funny. I'll have to find the last one for you. It's pretty entertaining. But it sounds like that's what like Betty and Barney's like different scenarios kind of sound like. Betty's, they were taking samples, and Barney's like, they just told me to stay still.
Well, we'll get in on part 2. We'll go into what actually happened to Barney. Barney does have some stuff happen to him that he recalls under hypnosis, and we're going to get into that in part 2. But I think this is a good spot to pick back up on next episode. We're going to definitely split this one into 2 parts. So still got a long way to go, and we're already a little over an hour into it. So yeah, what do you guys think of the story so far? I definitely, I think there's something to it, and I definitely, when we get into more of the facts of what was found out after the incident, after the hypnosis, I think you'll start to see, kind of believe it a little more. And there's pieces that are like, okay, yeah, that's plausible, but it's like, maybe not. I definitely also think it's a possibility that it could have been the military, the military exploring, some options. It's possible that that's what it was. It couldn't have been aliens, but I would definitely lean more on the side of the aliens than the military, considering the technology used and stuff that they report. But definitely
I mean,
fascinating.
I'm a believer. So I believe in Justin Bieber. So I also feel like this could happen. I've been thinking a lot about aliens lately. Like they've been really like hoeing on my mind lately. If that's the term. In the sense of I actually do think that a lot of our technology, a lot of the things we have, all of that is from aliens. And we've talked about this before. I have one friend that says that they believe the aliens were like someone's really big PhD dissertation project. And they're just observing us. And then others, and it makes sense, right? We know that the US, the world, not the US, we know that we are a tiny, tiny, tiny speck in the universe. So there has to be other people. And, so I think this is really interesting, and I'm really curious about their experience and how that is. The other thing I think about too is I read this really interesting book about memory and how our memory is actually really crap as humans, that like we actually don't remember as much as we think we do. And what we do remember, a lot of it is from like stories we retell.
Yes. And I think, to go off that, I think it'd be definitely easy for an advanced technology to find a way to manipulate our memories and manipulate our mind enough to take control of it. I mean, if they're as advanced as they appear, that people report them, I definitely think it's possible that they have a technology that they can use to, overtake our bodies, to, take control of them in a sense. I mean, there's people out there, if you go into the ancient aliens aspect, that they've been here all along and have been observing us or all along, or even the ones that are responsible for us even being here. The whole idea of perma what do they call that? There's a name for that, where worlds like artificial insemination, where an asteroid falls, and it's right on the tip of my tongue.
Hopefully we have a producer who could figure this out.
I mean, I need more context. Is it permaculture?
Where it's I know, it might be permaculture. It's basically where an asteroid has something on it that can cause life, and it falls on the Earth, and that's where life comes from.
Yeah, permaculture is an approach to land management and settlement design that adopts arrangements observed in flourishing natural ecosystems.
Yes, exactly. I think that's possible. I mean, they've found signs of life on asteroids, and that's a thing, science, but I think it's more to it. I mean, to bring the vast amounts of life that Earth has, I truly believe that there's more to it than that. If you look at all the worlds around us, all the other planets around us, there's like nothing, absolutely nothing. And for Earth to have as much life as it does, different kinds of life, I definitely feel like there's something artificially inseminating it,
I was thinking the other day at church. I have lots of thoughts about church, but one of the ones I was thinking was like, how did we come up with words, right? Like, did like Bubba and Gaga of our Neanderthals be like, fire, like, is that what happened? Or is there another being that came down and there was already created somewhere else, and we just
So I was listening to an episode of Tinfoil Hat. This is one of my favorite podcasts, and they had a guy on that was explaining his experiences with these beings that are called the Shining Ones. And this guy's from Australia, and he explains that it basically links all the sites of cryptids like Mothman, Bigfoot, as it's just sightings of these beings called the Shining Ones. And like when people are seeing the Mothman, it's just one of these Shining Ones wearing like a militarized suit. And same for Bigfoot. They're wearing like a militarized suit. And so and that's why they're able to, like, you see them, you turn around and look back and they're gone because they have advanced technology that causes them to cloak and not be seen. So I kind of like this theory. It's a new theory to me. I haven't heard it. I was watching another show that kind of touched on, it's on the Gaia network that kind of touches on, the Shining Ones kind of being here all along and helping us along, to get where we are. It explains a lot of our advancements in technology, that there's someone helping us. It doesn't have to help a particular government. It could be helping just a person, like someone like Nikola Tesla, who has talked about being helped by these beings and meeting with beings. So this doesn't mean that a government of any kind is meeting with extraterrestrials and hiding it. It could be that they're helping individuals. But this guy talks about meeting with these beings and having interactions with them, and them, putting transmitters in their head and stuff, so he can communicate with them. It's fascinating. Like I said, it's a new theory that I've heard, so I haven't looked into it as much as I'd like to at this point. But it's just a little bit I heard on it. It was definitely fascinating, and I'd definitely like to learn more.
Didn't Elon Musk, and we always know I have to talk about Elon. Didn't he
yes.
post something about going back to his home country or his home planet?
I don't know. And then it was weird about that. Is then he kind of like tried to play it off as it was like a joke or something.
Oh, he's in on the joke that we all make of him.
No, I know that would have been awesome, but no, like that. After he posted that, it was kind of like, oh, I was just kidding around, seeing if he can get any reactions out of it or whatever.
Mm.
And I can kind of see that, because what would be the point of posting that on social media? That, but he definitely seems like a guy that is from another planet,
Right. Yeah, that's my thought is his whole life story and everything, and him being so big about populating the planet. I'm like, are you actually from another planet? And you're one of the shiny ones that has been here?
It could be. And just to give a description on these shining ones, apparently, like a lot of the aliens that are supposedly out there, they live for a long period of time. And, at 80 years old, that's fairly young for them. That's equivalent to maybe 7, 8, teenager maybe. And at that point, they're about 5'8" in height. And they're kind of slender. They tend to have a little bit longer necks than we do, slightly bigger heads, and more almond shaped eyes. But they're definitely more humanoid than, say, a alien gray, the typical alien people talk about. But yeah, I definitely go ahead.
Can they mate with us?
That was a theory, is that's the reason. They apparently are they're kind of interdimensional, somewhat from the future in a sense. It's kind of hard to wrap my head around that whole scenario.
Oh yeah, because isn't their future, when we're getting the light from these places, it's 50 billion years in the past or something?
Right. Yeah. When you see the light coming from a star, that light originated 10,000 years ago or something crazy like that. You're not seeing it live action, because it's so far away. But these apparently in their time, they've manipulated their DNA so bad that it's kind of destroyed in a sense. So they're coming back and visiting us to try to repair it, and by taking samples, whether it's semen or eggs from a female, and to trying to manipulate their DNA to work again. And there's another gentleman that describes meeting this guy when he was in the military, and he describes them, and it's typically what people call the shining ones. Instead of calling them the shining ones, they call them the tall whites. But there's a guy in the Charles James Hall. So he's in the Air Force, and he wrote a book on it, and he apparently lived and interacted for 2 years with these tall whites in Nevada around the 1960s. So he's got a book called Walking with the Tall Whites that describes these events, and it also is a documentary on Amazon Prime that goes over it as well. And it's pretty fascinating. The guy's a nice old man. He's very I like his voice. He has a very pleasing voice. I will say that. So if you check it out, it's definitely pleasing to watch. But it's interesting. I mean, like I said, I don't necessarily buy this stuff 100%, but whether they're true or fake, the stories are absolutely fascinating.
I feel like you just
even
described
if it's made up. The fact that these people are able
and
to,
Prometheus, like that whole storyline with the tall ones or The Shining.
yeah, somewhat, yeah, definitely,
Mm-hmm.
definitely.
I like Prometheus.
How can you not like Alien?
Fine, but I like
Sigourney Weaver, badass.
That's a
That was
good one.
interesting. I mean, yeah, it's good. Like I'm
Did you
not
like
ready to talk
Aliens
about it, but
better?
It was good. I
The sequel.
like Prometheus better. Oh.
Oh my god.
No, I like Alien vs Predator. So I was voting for Predator.
There's apparently a new
Alien
one
vs
out.
Predator: Finding Nemo is my favorite
Oh, I've never seen that one.
because I made it up.
There's a new one called The Prey out that's all about the predator.
That's on Amazon, isn't it?
Story, kind of, I think. I don't know, actually. I don't know. I haven't seen it, but I remember seeing a trailer for it.
What is the one with Matthew McConaughey and
Sandra Bullock?
The woman who is in
Interstellar?
Well, we're gonna play a game called Man. I can't remember anything right now.
Anne Hathaway.
Yeah, Interstellar. And she like goes into space.
The brunette or the redhead?
Is it Anne Hathaway? No.
Jessica Chastain.
The redhead.
Yes, he is. I'm looking at the cast right now.
I don't know what.
Are you thinking Jodie Foster?
It's an old movie. Like
Contact?
Yes, that's what it is. Jodie Foster. And Contact. Yes.
Oh, yeah. Yeah, I've seen that one. I haven't seen Interstellar, and I've heard good things about Interstellar, even from the UFO community has a fondness for Interstellar. Because they say it gets pretty close to actual like interaction between UFOs, aliens, and humans. So it's got a thumbs up from the UFO community.
But I mean, it makes sense if we're like, I think I'd agree. We're not alone. It makes sense that there are people, like there were creatures that helped us become who we are. I mean, I know there's the whole thought of like evolution, and we come from alligators or whatever monkeys, but they come from something else. But I think that this is interesting too, of like that being part of it. The intermarrying kind of mingling has gotten us here.
Yeah. I think another thing that I really believe in, because there's kind of precedence to prove it in a sense, is I think that this isn't humans' first go round, right? Well, maybe not humans, but intelligent life's first go round on this planet. There's been several instances where we found objects that are deep in the earth that we've uncovered that have, I'm having a brain fart here, that have patina on it that shouldn't. They found a metal object in Transylvania, I believe, that they call it the wedge, and it's like an aluminum type material, and it has patina on it that's says it's 10,000 plus years old, and they didn't use metal in that sense that long ago. They weren't able to, they didn't have metallurgy down like that. And you can't, the funny thing is about patina, you can't fake patina. There's no way to chemically like fake a patina on a metal. So to say that it's a fraud and somebody planted it there, it's impossible. And this object has such a thick layer of patina on it that there's no way that it could be, possibly faked. There was a clock that scientists say is like a calendar in a sense, or it tracks celestial movements that they found, I believe, in the water. I'm not sure where, but it had a thick layer of patina on it that's way older than it should exist. It's kind of attributed to be like the first computer. And it just, things like that make me think that we had an advanced culture prior and something happened, whether it was the Great Flood, but something happened that caused us to forget all this knowledge and basically had to start from scratch. So it's just, I think that I definitely kind of ride in that campus, and it kind of goes back to the Anunnaki and the Nephilim. It kind of speaks about that they inhabited the earth, and God punished them and basically hit the reset button.
Well, I can definitely see that too. I mean, I think, not that I'm saying that we're going to get punished or whatever, but I could see with global warming, I'm a global warming person. I could see that with that happening, and the way things are going, that I could see it like we having to reset, or if the Great Flood happened, it took all these people, these lives, and we had to like kind of start again.
Yeah. Because you think about it, say the story of, was it Moses? Who had the boat?
It was not Moses. It was Noah.
Noah's Ark. Yes. Man, shame on me. So think about that. If Noah's Ark, he had his family on a boat, and then he supposedly had a male and a female of each animal across the world. I don't think it was the actual animal. I think it was just DNA samples from the animals, because how could he fit all those different animals on a boat? That's a lot of animals, and feed them, and et cetera, et cetera. I think it was just DNA samples.
I was going to say, did he have a bunch of shaving cream bottles with the DNA in it?
Huh? Yeah, he was hiding it. Yeah.
I was like, how did he know? That wasn't even where I was going. I was going to say, how do you have time to jack off that many animals?
Blood, Amanda, blood.
Well, I was going with blood samples.
Oh.
It's not
DNA's blood.
No.
I was thinking like there was an egg and a sperm. Oh gosh.
They're advanced. They don't need all that to create life. They could just use the blood. So if you think about it, if he just had his family and all his DNA samples, there's only so much knowledge that his family can carry on, and it may be basic stuff. None of his family could have been scientists. It could have been designed that way from God specifically to cause that reset to where they're not continuing off where they left off. They wanted them to truly reset and go back to as primitive as possible to start over. He wanted life to live, to carry on with the animals and the people, but didn't want them to be as advanced as they were. The ancient aliens, back to that piece they found in Transylvania, is ancient aliens believe that piece is like a landing foot to a craft. Is an idea that they think, and I can kind of see it, because you know what it reminds me of. You ever seen like a front end loader, like a heavy piece of equipment, the teeth it has on it? It kind of looks like one of those teeth.
I was going to say, it definitely looks like some sort of bracket
on our Instagram
that connects to like an axle or something.
Yeah.
Also see.
Yeah. And they did take a piece. There's a one hole that's drilled into it on the side that they removed to test it. But there's a hole that goes down like inside the tooth that was already there. And then there's like a chip off the front of the tooth that they also removed to do a sample on it. But yeah, we'll put the tooth and then also the computer that I spoke about as well on the Instagram. The ancient computer. Cool. Yeah, it's fascinating. But yeah, we'll definitely, on the next episode, we'll pick up on the rest of the
Betty and Barbie.
Benny. Now I'm calling Benny. To the
Betty
the
and
Betty.
Barney.
Oh man, we'll get this right one day. So we'll pick up on it next time and finish this up. Hopefully Dave will be able to join us for episode 15, part 2. Yep. And yeah, we'll pick up on it. And please remember to rate and review and tell your friends about us, your hairdresser, your barber, all that fun stuff. Get us higher up on those charts. Doesn't matter where they are. Tell them to download us and listen to us. And also leave us a 5-star review on your podcast platform of choice. And if you do, send us an email rather, or hit us up on Instagram at TWRD_podcast, and we will send you out some stickers. I want to thank everyone for listening, and we'll see you next time.
For our Saudi Arabian listeners, Assalamu alaikum. Oh, that's hello. Assalama. Just goodbye.